Today's video is very serious because it is my turn once again to be probed. That's right. You guys have asked questions. I'll be answering them today. This is actually episode number 96 of Probing Paul, which usually happens monthly. Sometimes I skip a month or two, but the point is these questions cut deep. They were asked mostly in the last episode of Probing Paul, which is linked in the video's description. I think I'm ready, so let's proceed.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the Paul's Hardware store on paulshardware.net, the only official source for Paul's Hardware merchandise. Tantalizing t-shirts, brilliant beer sets, high-quality hoodies, and more, all featuring the classic thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers, or the 8-bit thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers who hate curves. New designs are added sporadically and at random, so head over to paulshardware.net and get some of that sweet, sweet merch right now. Or not right now, after you watch the video. Either way. As per custom with this series, we begin with a look back down the Probing Paul hole of history, which goes back pretty far these days. There's a Probing Paul playlist if you want to get the answers to all the questions I've ever been asked, but once again, if you want to ask me a question for the next episode, put it in the comment section down below. And our first question comes from Gandhi. Thank you for subscribing. Is $500 on a motherboard something that makes sense given all the possible features? I'm just trying to make it make sense. We're all trying to make sense of the situation these days, Gandhi, but I will answer your question by saying no, it does not make sense, in my personal opinion, to pay $500 plus for a motherboard. And along with a lot of the PC components and the way pricing has gone in the past 5 to 10 years, motherboards have tried to sidle in alongside graphics cards as being like, hey, GPU prices keep going up and up and up. We can make motherboard prices do that too. That's not to say motherboard prices haven't gone up to a somewhat reasonable degree. I used to recommend motherboards in the $100 to $150 range for budget entry level. That's more crept up to the $150-ish to $200 range, which is an increase, but it also somewhat tracks with inflation. I'd say it's more the motherboards at the higher end that often get pitched and shown off in really fancy high-end builds. And yes, I fall into this trap sometimes myself as well, but the boards that cost $400, $500 plus often aren't giving you a lot of additional features for that extra money. I did a video called 3 Levels of Buying a Motherboard that is my most recent attempt to encapsulate the motherboard buying experience and what you should be spending more money on versus what is just fluff or things that they try to use to elevate the price of the motherboard without actually giving you more functionality. But while motherboards are complicated, the base set of features that they should have is fairly simple. It needs a socket that's compatible with your CPU. It needs power delivery that's capable of running that CPU, and I would say any CPU that's compatible with that socket at its highest level, so even going up to the 12 and 16 core options on AMD's AM5 platform, for example. You don't necessarily need overbuilt power delivery that can handle high-end overclocking, because that's actually a fairly niche activity for people. And that's why, barring some very cut-down entry-level boards, most motherboards that cost $200 plus are capable of handling any CPU that you might socket in if you're just trying to run it at stock. Beyond that, you need DIMM slots for memory, you need expansion for PCI Express, as well as M.2 slots for installing more SSDs. That's something where I might consider spending a few extra dollars because M.2 slots are somewhat limited on boards. Having more of them will allow you to more easily expand your storage setup without having to go with an add-on riser card or something like that. And then of course you got your I/O connectivity for USB, Wi-Fi, other things that might be integrated onto the motherboard. And at the risk of making a blanket statement, I think every motherboard manufacturer, whether you're talking MSI, Gigabyte, Asus, ASRock, or otherwise, has a board available for $300 to $350 that meets all of those criteria, looks decently good if you're concerned at all about aesthetics, and doesn't cost $500, $700, even $800 to $1,000 or more as some of the high-end motherboards do. So this is why when I'm making build recommendations and part lists, I typically lean towards motherboards that are in that $200 to $300 price range because they get the job done without overspending, leaving you more money on your budget to invest in a graphics card or a higher end CPU or something that's actually going to affect performance. And I leave those really expensive motherboards to people who are just absolutely enamored with a particular aesthetic design, which I will say makes some sense if you're both really into the aesthetics and you have that spare money to spend. But for the vast majority of people, you can stick to a budget or mid-range motherboard with no problems at all. Next question here from Andrew Doby 4043. Do you ever plan on doing another Arctic Panther build or upgrade? I love the Arctic Panther videos and ended up building my own water-cooled system in a Fractal Define S afterwards. Thank you for the question, Andrew, and thank you for subscribing. When it comes to water cooling, particularly custom water cooling, which I have dabbled in at times, I have learned some lessons over the years. And one is that I don't necessarily want to have a custom water-cooled system that I'm relying on for like regular production. The greatest example of this is a project I did several years ago now, 5-6 years ago now, which is called Riptide. I did it in the Corsair 10,000D case, which is massive, and I attempted, as I often do, to build a system that I wasn't going to just build and show and be like, look, this cool system I built. I wanted to make use of it. So I had both my main video editing system in there. I also had a secondary system in there that was being used as a NAS. And long story short, due to various issues with that build, pump failure that happened, and just the overall complication of having two systems wired up in the same massive case, with the case itself being so large that I couldn't even physically lift it up and move it to do work on it by myself, basically caused me more headaches than it was worth, in my opinion. So I eventually tore down that system, repurposed the parts. I took the NAS and put it in an actual little case, and that system is actually still up and running. It's been moved over to TrueNAS now instead of FreeNAS. Oh look, there's me and Joe moving the case.
Yeah, heavy.
This is before the remodel. Oh, it's Hiro and Nori. Hiro has a big cone on. Oh. So perhaps I bit off more than I could chew with that one, but a slightly more practical setup for a custom liquid cool build like that would be a single system in a more modest case. And that is what Riptide was. And Riptide also was in service for quite a few years before it eventually got taken down. And in fact, Riptide is still with my set of unused computers and cases down here on the ground below. Bringing things back around to answer your question though, the reason I haven't done more of this type of build, custom loop water cooling, is one, due to the complexity and the fact that you're adding potential points of failure into your build. And I tend to lean more towards DIY advice for people who are building a PC for the first time, and getting into this level of water cooling is definitely not something that a beginner is recommended to attempt. But don't let me make you think that I've completely given up on custom water cooling loops. I think just the right opportunity hasn't come around quite yet. It is something I would still be open to in the future. I would just probably be doing a more of a showcase display system, maybe something that goes back and sits in the background again. And of course, for any build that I'm going to make, that I'm going to invest this level of planning and building and time in, I want to make sure I'm getting some use out of that as well. I'm not going to be doing something like this for a system that I'm using on a day-to-day basis as my workstation for video editing and that sort of thing, probably ever again. Question number 3 comes from Nick Thorn8490. Hey Paul, loving the channel as ever. Thank you very much, Nick. Question about how you produce your videos. Assuming you use OBS to capture your audio, do you capture them separately or is the mic linked to the camera? I've tried separately and always get a little lag between the video and audio. Cheers. Cheers to you as well, and just to give you a basic rundown of how I'm shooting a video, like this kind of video, which we classify more as like a talking head video where I'm sitting at the desk talking to the camera. I have screen capture set up over here with OBS, so that is recording audio on a mic down here, but that's mostly just for synchronization. I also have OBS set up so I can just hotkey switch between screen capture over here and also capturing the video, which is being piped over from the camera, and I'm still using a Panasonic Lumix GH5 because it's still a great camera. However, I'm also using the camera to record directly, so when I send Joe, who is here today, stuff to edit, he usually gets the A-roll, which is the direct recorded video from the Panasonic Lumix GH5. He gets the audio, which I'm also recording with this lav mic, which records separately as well. And then he gets the OBS capture file, which has screenshots, or sometimes it switches to me and everything, which he uses often to switch to B-roll or to show things that I'm showing people on screen. So Joe ends up with 2 or possibly 3 separate files that each have their own audio tracks. And then in Adobe Premiere, it can use the audio files to actually synchronize everything. Apparently my lav mic still here has a little bit of a drift if for a longer take, so if it's longer than 5 or 10 minutes, Joe says he still goes and manually shifts it over a little bit so everything still syncs up. There are of course ways to pipe everything into OBS and to capture everything there directly. I just tend to like having the separate files in case something breaks or stops working midway through. But if you are trying to use OBS to capture everything, you want to click on the little gear that's in the audio mixer area. That'll bring up advanced audio properties, and in there you can actually go and do a millisecond sync offset. So when we've done live streaming before, we have used this to synchronize the audio and the video. Sometimes you can do like a local capture and like clap, and then bringing that into your video editing software and seeing how far offset the clap is, and then using that to adjust this sync offset however many milliseconds is needed so that everything syncs up. But that usually takes some trial and error. But you know what I've discovered is if there's a tiny little bit of lag between the audio and video, most of the time it's not very noticeable. We have a couple questions that came in through Joe's Discord, and I have been intending to set up a Discord for quite some time, but I don't want to have to manage it and police people there, which is why I haven't. But I'm still, like, I've thought about it a lot, and so that makes me feel like I've almost done it. For now though, we do have some really cool people who participate in Joe's Discord server, including Crafty Hack. Hey Crafty! Crafty's been a long time viewer of both my content as well as good friends like Kyle. He's helped out with live streams. We love Crafty, and so he of course asked a question that is fraught with nuance and challenge to answer directly. Does Paul think that AI is and will be overall a net positive or net negative for humanity? Not what does he think what it could be, but what he thinks it will end up being in reality. I'm sorry, Crafty, I can't give you my honest opinion on this one because it's a little depressing. Yeah, just leave it at that. Like I try to look at AI as a technology, as we have looked at many technologies that have come about in the past that man has developed or whatever. And we try to separate the technology itself and how it works from how people might use the technology. But if you look at history at all, it's often been the case that new technology is used for maybe not the most humanitarian or uplifting for humanity type purposes. And I guess that would be my greatest fear right now is like, I see the potential for AI being used for good, but I also see the potential for AI being used for bad or for evil or however you want to describe that. And I think because as I've grown older and more cynical and perhaps not quite had the same rosy perspective I had when I was younger, that there's a lot of just really bad ways that AI could be used. And there's a lot of nuance and detail here that I'm skipping over because I am running out of time and because your question has caused me to think in a deep way that I don't want to right now. I'm sorry, Crafty. That's all I got for you. All right, let's move on to Max Neal's question, also from Joe's Discord. And for this one, it's a multi-part, so I'm gonna try to do it as quickly as I can. Any interest in having more gaming streams? Yes, and as we always say every year when we do our charity live stream, I would love to do more gaming streams, and I have not, once again. But we do have, at last, a date for our charity live stream. Saturday, December 6th is when we will be doing the Awesome Hardware charity live stream, which we've been doing annually for, I don't know, decades now, it feels like. We won't be at Kyle's office anymore because he doesn't have his office anymore, so we'll be streaming from here, from my home. And I'm pretty excited because it is typically the time when I play the most video games out of the year, every year. Although I will say this year I've been playing more games lately because I've been gaming with my daughter, and we've been playing Minecraft and Overwatch. A little bit of Lego Harry Potter, Lovers in a Dangerous Space Time, that's a cool one too. Second question, what are 3 records, CDs, albums? Yes, I guess you'd recommend off the cuff. Doesn't have to be your top 3, can be niche, everything is on the table. I'm gonna go like with the first things that pop into my head. One would be, I guess, up there with one of my favorite albums of all time, just because it's a disc I can listen to front to back, and I first started listening to it when I was younger, which would be Weezer's Blue Album. Not as big of a fan of Weezer's more recent stuff, but the Blue Album still has a special place in my heart. The second one comes to mind because thinking about albums, full records, like I feel like this is less common these days. I really enjoyed when an album would come out that was cohesive, that wasn't just like, here's a bunch of individual songs. It was a bunch of songs that were meant to go back to back, that sort of take you along the telling of a story or something like that. And there's lots of albums that qualify, but one that stands out to me that I've listened to a lot before is Pink Floyd's The Wall. And I've actually really enjoyed some of the live performances of Pink Floyd. There's an album from I think 2001, which is a live performance of The Wall that I've listened to many, many times over and over again. And I just really appreciate how, I mean, the music itself, of course, is awesome, but I really appreciate sort of the storytelling aspect of it and how it sort of unfolds as you listen to the entire thing. Third one, and this is just one that's popped into my head a lot lately. I don't know if it counts as an album. Technically, it's one song. NoFX, The Decline. Everyone go listen to that right now. One last question coming in here from Jay the Caffeinator. Hello Jay, you're awesome. Thank you for all of your support. Thank you for all the comments you leave on all the videos. I try my best to at least toss a heart on each one and reply when possible, which includes this one. And you asked a very pertinent question, which is, when was the last mail time video? I don't know, it was like a month or 2 or 3 back. So I'm gonna use this as a cue to promote my P.O. box, my P.O. Box, which is on screen right now. I would like to do another mail time soon, which is when I open stuff that people send in. So hey, if you're watching my videos and you're like, hey, I think Paul would find this thing interesting, or you know, you can send beer, you can send whatever. Jay likes to send coffee sometimes, which I know Joe greatly appreciates as well. So thanks, Jay, from Joe as well, which I'm sure he's also directly thanked you every time you send that. Joe's very good at saying thanks. But anyway, guys, that's how I'm gonna wrap up this video. If you guys want to send something to my P.O. Box, that's cool. If you wanna leave a question in the question comments area down below, that's cool too. If you wanna hit the thumbs up button on this video, if you wanna share it, if you wanna subscribe to my channel, we appreciate all of those things. And of course, you can check out my store at paulshardware.net, where you can buy shirts and mugs and pint glasses to help support my channel too, and get yourself some nice merch at the same time. Thanks, Joe, for being here. Thanks you guys for watching. We'll see you all in the next one.